Well, we are well underway on the road to the 2024 presidential election, and the season already heating up as we have more candidates putting their hats in the ring, including a big name about to drop today, allegedly, according to reports over Twitter Spaces. Joining us now to talk about that and more is a professor of political science at Oakland University, where he also serves as the director for their Center for Civic Engagement. Dave Dulio is with us again on the Megacast. Dave, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, Tyler, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you on. It's a big day. It's been a big week in American politics, particularly as it regards to the 2024 presidential election. A prolific fundraiser in his own right, Tim Scott, joining the race for the GOP nomination for president. Senator from South Carolina already brought in $2 million in fundraising just in the first 24 hours of his campaign, as that began earlier this week, confirmed by Fox News. And he's not the only one potentially getting in the race this week. The big rumor is that today, Ron DeSantis, with Elon Musk via Twitter Spaces, will announce his run for the 2024 presidential election. You've called this before the worst kept secret in American politics, and today maybe perhaps that secret is no more. When that actually drops, if that is today or if that is in the near future, how big of an immediate impact does that have on particularly Republican politics in America, but also the 2024 presidential election, once it's official that Ron DeSantis is in the race?
Yeah, not much changes, right? I mean, I think that it's more of the same. Ron DeSantis has been running for president for several months now. I think that this is a well-timed or well thought out, at least from their perspective, time to jump in formally. But I don't think it's going to change much in terms of how he approaches the campaign trail or how he approaches talking about other candidates for office, at least in the short term.
In terms of this particular matter, I think the most interesting thing is the way that he's going about announcing his presidential campaign. It's something we have not seen before, making that announcement over social media, particularly live social media, with another pretty pervasive figure in American politics nowadays, in Elon Musk. So this kind of, for me, triggers something of a different direction or a different norm we'll probably see in the near future in American politics, using social media, much like we saw in the early days of social media around 2008 with Barack Obama. That had a big impact on his campaign. How big of an impact do you believe that this particular way of going about things from Ron DeSantis could potentially have on his early days in this campaign as he tries to gain momentum on President Trump?
Yeah, I think that the reaction that we've seen already about the decision to make this announcement via Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk is it's already creating the buzz that the DeSantis campaign wanted to have. And it's one of those things that they were maybe criticized or laughed at about going about it in this way, but it's still going to get all the attention that they want and that they need. We're talking about it. Every cable news show is going to talk about it. And they're going to pull clips from the Twitter Spaces session that he does with Musk, and they're going to play that on cable news. So you might as well have given a speech, right? I mean, it's the same end result for the DeSantis campaign, but in a different way. And I think it's also worth noting that DeSantis is doing this on Twitter, a platform that President Trump is no longer on by choice, but one that he used very, very effectively in 2016 and 2020 to further his campaign.
Yeah, and what's also pretty interesting about this too is what Elon Musk said talking at the Wall Street Journal's CEO summit earlier on in the week about this particular announcement, saying, quote, "This will be the first time something like this is happening on social media," and in close quote, and included in that statement that it is expected real-time question and answers also for this presumptive candidate for the GOP nomination for president of the United States Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in what essentially becomes a bit of a taste of a rally, but also not just some video that's being released to the nation and to the world, but interactive too. That's a huge part of this, getting out on day one with people that ultimately may be big in deciding whether or not you become president of the United States.
Sure. I think that, and I think it's also an interesting juxtaposition from that strategy to the tact of the White House, which has really protected the president from questions from reporters and let alone the American people, right? I think that access is going to be really interesting to watch, whether or not the DeSantis campaign continues down this road. I'd also like to know how live and in person these questions are really going to be. Are they curated? Are they stacking the deck? Right, which is a tried and true method of political candidates, right? I mean, and those in office, right? So, that's what they're advertising it as. I'd like to know a little bit more about the details there.
Yeah, the thing about Twitter Spaces is it's not really that open forum where you're you're not on a Zoom call where you're raising your hand in the chat or something and then saying your question. You're not let in to speak. You're not going to be speaking, and there aren't those live comments either. People will make the commentary on Twitter, which will also be interesting and draw a lot of eyes to the DeSantis campaign on day one. But I would imagine, as you said, very curated, very well thought out who gets in to ask these questions, whether they're media or from the public or other political figures.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's just smart politics, right? I mean, I think that all candidates want to have control, right, over the message, and this is, I think, going to allow them to do that while having the appearance of being much more open and transparent than other strategies, maybe.
And you mentioned earlier, which was interesting, the juxtaposition of this, by comparison, much more open way to announce your presidential campaign and to discuss the issues with the public than what we're seeing from the White House. What impact does this have on Joe Biden's campaign? Because now you have that commentary that's now going to really shift into high gear of, well, the Republican candidates are out in the open. They are speaking to the public. They're being open about their opinions about the campaign. And Biden and the White House are being very closed off. They're being very strategic with how they speak. How does that speak really to the difference in strategy between the Republicans trying to unseat a sitting president and the Democrats trying to hold on to political power in the federal government?
Yeah, I don't think it will change what the White House does or the Biden campaign, right? I think that, if anybody on their team gets asked about it, I think they're going to say, the Republicans are going to do their thing and they're going to run through this primary and we're going to run our own race and run our own campaign. And I think that's probably the smart response. I think the last thing the White House wants now is for Joe Biden to get dragged into some sort of rhetorical battle with Ron DeSantis, or there start to be comparisons made between, how DeSantis is handling the press versus how Biden is handling the press. Because frankly, I think the DeSantis would come out looking better. I think it's also interesting to note that the 2020 campaign, right, waged in the throes of COVID, it was one where Biden wasn't out front like he's going to have to be this time around. I think that there's going to be more expectation for more public displays, right, of the Biden campaign and for him to be out there talking to voters, talking to the press. And so it'll be really interesting to see how they navigate that.
Yeah, I think both sides are kind of implementing a similar strategy, just at different points in time in this campaign. I think right now, as you said, the Republican strategy is get out in front, say these things now, and the Democrats staying back, saying, we'll let the Republicans and these two juggernaut candidates in DeSantis and Trump kind of sink their own ships and have to play catch up while we stay in place. And later on, as you get into the actual Democrat versus Republican one-on-one election season, the Republicans hoping for a bit of the same, getting Joe Biden out in public and having to actually face him answering questions off the cuff from the public and speaking to people in America about his presidential campaign.
Yeah, I tend to think that anytime you've got an incumbent running for reelection, and this is for president or really any office, right? When you've got an incumbent running unopposed, and I don't think that RFK Jr. Is a threat to the president, right? I mean, it's Joe Biden's nomination. He's gonna get it. But when you've got a contested primary on the other side, that really helps that incumbent, right? Because the Republicans are going to spend months, more than a year, beating each other up, punching each other in the face, and that's going to just damage all of them, Trump is going to get his licks in on DeSantis and vice versa, and Nikki Haley and Tim Scott are going to go after both of them, and that's going to damage whoever emerges from the Republican primary, and that's going to be interesting to watch how they try to repair that damage as they go in and go up against Joe Biden.
And all this is going to have a big impact on Michigan, on Michigan's politics, and Michigan's going to have a big impact on the national level. We're already seeing that happening now in the early parts of the campaign, as President Trump is expected to speak in the month of June at the local Oakland County Republican Party's Lincoln Day dinner on June 25th, where he'll be awarded their Man of the Decade. Not just the state of Michigan having a big impact on the overall election season, but right here in Oakland County, a very consequential part of a very consequential state in the presidential election. Just how big of a role does Michigan have in this right now, and will continue to have from this point to the end of the November election in 2020?
Yeah, Michigan's always important, right? I mean, I think that you're seeing attention paid to Michigan. I think you're going to see that continue. There's no question that Trump likes it here and has visited many times and over the course of his campaigns. I think you'll see Ron DeSantis make more of have his presence felt more here. I think that it's, and in the general election, Michigan's going to be a competitive state again. It always is. And there's going to be 15 electoral votes up for grabs that both candidates are going to covet. And, it's going to be one of those wall-to-wall TV commercial fall of 24 like we normally have.
And all this going to continue to have a massive impact on our own state's politics. We're going to be a focal point of this 2024 presidential election. Both the state of Michigan and us right here in Oakland County, a focal point within that focal point. Dave, thank you so much for joining us as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me.